Welcome to the Graphic Design Bootcamp. My name is Derek, and if you're watching this, that means you've signed up for the course and you're on the inside track, and I love it. I love that you're here. We're so excited to have you, and by we, I mean our awesome community. This course has been out for a couple years now, so there's a pro and a con to that. The pro is we have a thriving community on Facebook of fellow students who are taking this course right now alongside of you. So be sure to follow the link below and get signed up. So if you have questions or you want to get some feedback on anything you're working on, or if you need help along the way, you can get help from myself, from our TA, as well as the thousands of students in the group. So definitely take a minute after this video, make sure you follow that link and get signed up for the group. The next thing I want to say is the con to this having been out for a couple of years is that, as I'm sure you're fully aware, technology gets updated all the time. So this being a technology-based course, you're going to notice there are some things that have changed. So I work really hard to keep this as current and fresh as possible. Current both from the topical level as far as what I teach you, that it's relevant information that will be helpful for you as a graphic designer, but also relevant in that when you're looking at the screen, it looks like the same thing that you're doing. But that gets difficult. For example, Adobe just rolled out the Adobe CC 2019 version. So when I first recorded this, most of the content was in the 2015 edition. So as things change, I go in and I update videos and I make changes wherever possible. The other thing to be aware of, if you're using an older version of the software before the Creative Cloud, so like CS6 or CS5, you'll notice that there might be some things that you can't do because some of the new functionality has recently been added. However, majority of the course, I'd say about 60% of the course, is theory and things you can follow along no matter what version of the design software you're using. And along those lines, I've even had students use apps like Pixelmator and Affinity Pro and some other non-even Adobe related software as well. So that could be a possibility for you as well. So the next thing I want to take a second is just encourage you. I know that when you get started on something new, it can be scary and daunting for those of you that maybe have no experience. And I just want to let you know that you can do it. I believe in you. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to hit us up in the Q&A section or again in that Facebook group. Those are great places to get a hold of us. And then last, if you already have some experience and you've already got the application set up, feel free to skip the next lecture and just dive right into the content. In the next lesson, we're going to get you up and running, get the software installed, and we're going to dive right in. And then last, I want to point out that at the end of the course, there's a bonus section. I was recently challenged to go live every single day for 30 days or on a row on Facebook. So I have a 30-day Facebook Live challenge back at the end of this course where you can watch content from there. You can get a behind-the-scenes look at my daily, well, maybe not my daily life, but as far as my office and some of my workflow tips and tricks and just some Q&A with students. So it was a lot of fun to do, and I hope you learn a lot from that. So that's pretty much it. Again, I just want to say thank you so much for joining, and let's get started.
In this lecture, I want to show you exactly how to download the Adobe Creative Cloud app, the desktop app, and then from there, download all of the apps you need to be successful with this course. Now, there's a good chance that if you've already purchased this course, you already have done this, so feel free to skip this lecture at any time. For the rest of you who've never done this before, I'm going to also walk through some of the subscription and plan pricing structures that they have available and guide you toward what might be the best fit for you. So first of all, let's go to adobe.com, and their homepage changes frequently. So this might look a little different when you get there, but up at the top, we've got their main markets and sections available, and we're looking for the creativity and design. So I'm going to click on this link here. And from there in the drop down, we have some really helpful links that you should consider checking out if you have more questions than what I've answered in this video. But what you're looking for is the View All Plans and Pricing button. Now, if this has changed since I've recorded this and it looks totally different, you might have just as good success by going to google.com and typing in Adobe Creative Cloud. From there, pick whichever one looks like the best link for you. Here they've got an ad, so I'm just going to click on this one right at the top. And that should take me right to that same plans and pricing page. In this case, it's just the homepage for the Creative Cloud, so it's got some more tabs about what's new, learning and support, all products, and a free trial. Now, one thing I want to point out, their free trial is only 7 days long. So what I suggest is if you're taking this course and you've just purchased this, dive right in and do this right away, because I want you to know that it's a good fit or not a good fit as soon as possible. If you discover this isn't a good fit for you, go ahead and get a refund for this course as well. It doesn't hurt my feelings at all. I want to make sure that this is something that you love. So from there, let's go ahead and click on the Choose a Plan button, and that should redirect you to this page here. Now I want to point out there are 4 different tabs across the top. They have plans and pricing for individuals, which will probably be 90% of you, business, students and teachers, and schools and universities. So if you're currently a student at an accredited college or university, definitely check out this plan and step through the different processes here. You can click on the Learn More button and see if your school qualifies for this, because if it does, it's a substantial savings. Now, for the rest of us, you'll probably end up choosing the individual's plan. Now, within this plan, we've got a few different options here to consider. So one approach you might take to following along with this course would be to do the trial version, try it for the 7 days, and then go from there and reevaluate whether you think you want to continue on or get a refund for this and the course as well. The other thing you could do is a majority of this course currently touches on Photoshop. We do get into Illustrator, we do get into InDesign, but I would say if you had to get stuck on an island with one app, I would choose Photoshop, because with Photoshop, you can do a majority of the graphic design tasks you'll be doing as a beginner. So the way you could do that is you could come over here to Single App, choose an app such as Photoshop, and then click the Buy Now button. You'll be asked to make your own account and it will give you the download. You'll notice this is only $20 a month if we choose annual plan paid monthly. So what that means is you are signing a contract essentially for 1 year, and they'll give you this discounted rate of $20 a month. If I click monthly plan where there is no commitment, you'll notice it's a little bit more expensive. Or I can choose to pay prepaid for the whole year, and it's about $240 for the year. Now, I know that might seem like a lot. When I first started and learned, you had to buy the entire Creative Suite, and it was over $1,000 to buy. So this is actually a really good deal to be able to kind of put your big toe in the water and see if it's something that you enjoy. You could also consider this photography plan. Depending on the level you choose, you'll notice the options down here change, and this includes both Photoshop and Lightroom. So for those of you who might be leaning towards photography but dabbling in Photoshop and some graphic design, this could be a really good plan for you as well. It also, depending on the plan you choose, comes with 20 gigs, a terabyte, or I guess 1 terabyte of storage with just Lightroom. So something to consider for sure. Now, I use the All Apps bundle, and I would suggest that for you as well. If you're set on doing graphic design and learning more, or even video editing and photography, by doing this annual plan with all of the apps, you have access to absolutely everything from video editing, photography, the web design apps, and all of the Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign creative apps as well. So this is what I actually have. Recently I upgraded, and I have the Adobe Stock bundle as well, which then adds a monthly subscription for images. Now, before you choose any of these, especially the annual plans paid monthly where you're actually signing up for a contract, one more thing I want to point out is on Adobe's legal page, they mentioned that if you cancel, you have to do so within 14 days of your initial order. So what that means is, let's say you have a 7-day trial and you go for the 7 days, then they would bill your card on that 7th or 8th day. And then 14 days from when they build your card, you need to contact them and say, hey, I want to cancel if there's any issue. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you will be charged for 50% of the remaining contract obligation. So if you've got a whole year left, they're going to charge you for half of that year. So I just want to be very clear to you before you dive in and then forget that you've got a subscription. Make sure that this is something you want to do. And don't forget, you've only got those 7 days as a trial before you kind of get serious. So again, if you're going to be a designer, this is what you want to do. It's just a cost of doing business. There are some other apps that we can talk about a little bit later, such as Pixelmator and a few other new ones like Sketch, where you can pay for it outright and never have to do the subscription thing. But the Adobe Creative Cloud is by far the industry standard. So once you've selected what plans and pricing makes the most sense for you, you can click the Buy Now button at the bottom of any one of these. It'll redirect you to the page where then you can set up your email account and create your Adobe ID, and then from there just follow the prompts to download the software that you need. You'll be able to download the Creative Cloud desktop app, which is a smaller app so it downloads quickly. You install it on your computer, and then from there you can open it up and see all of the different applications that are available to you depending on your subscription level. From there, just click the button over here on the side that'll say install if you don't have it installed yet. Or in my case, I've got a few that need updated, so I can go ahead and click the update button now. The Adobe Desktop app is a great way to keep all of your apps current, as well as using these tabs across the top where you can learn more about how to use the software, manage your assets, find Adobe stock for your next project, or even create your Behance portfolio. All right, now that we've got our application set up, we're ready to go. It's time to roll up our sleeves and actually make something. So hopefully you're excited about this. I figured we could start off with a poster. And the reason why I want to start with a poster is, well, actually there's a couple reasons. The first is it's a rectangle. So the tools and the skills you learn in these next couple videos will hopefully apply to just about anything you want to use or create, such as a Facebook cover image, something for Pinterest, maybe something on Instagram, or a web banner or a postcard, you name it. Just about anything you make as a graphic designer will be some form of a rectangle shape. So I figured a poster is a great place to start. Also, number two, I want to make something that teaches you these skills, but is also practical that you could actually use right away. So while I'm going to give you some assets to work with if you don't have anything, feel free to deviate and create something that's helpful for you. So maybe it's something you want to sell. You could create a for sale poster and put it up at a coffee shop. Maybe you want to promote a social cause or an event of some kind. Feel free to take these skills and make something all your own. All right, the other thing I want to do is, as we're learning some graphic design principles and elements, I also want to teach you how to use the software. So it's going to be a mashup of both skills and techniques as well as theory. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Start off by opening Photoshop. In this case, I'm just going to click on the icon in my dock to launch Photoshop. Once you have Photoshop open, it's most likely going to look like this. This is a little update just to keep this course current. So this is the screen currently, the home screen for Adobe Photoshop CC 2018. I'm going to go ahead and splice this in between the rest of this video because in the later part of this video, I've got some great content to walk you through as well. But I want to make sure that you're not confused and seeing something different when you start this course. So when you get to this landing page, there's only a few things you really need to worry about. Right now we're under the Work tab, but there's also this Learn tab, and this is really helpful if you want to continue learning on your own. There's a lot of great tutorials and lessons from Photoshop, so you can click on any of these images and follow those tutorials as necessary. I'll click back on the Work tab, and really all you're going to want to worry about right now is creating a new file. So over here on the left, I've got this Create New button. And it opens up the new document window. And there's a lot of great stuff hidden in here. You wouldn't think so, but if you click on any one of these tabs, let's say you want to start a new web project. I can click on this web tab, and it gives you the most common preset sizes that you could click on to get right into a project. And when I click on any one of these, you'll notice on the right-hand side, it updates the size of my document and the resolution and the color modes. All things we'll discuss very shortly. But what's even cooler, as I scroll down, you'll see there's a lot of great templates baked right into Photoshop. So if you want to start exploring other people's files and see what they've done, you can load up any of these as well. Same thing applies to art and illustration. We've got some basic default sizes, and as we scroll down, there's a lot of great things you can use to get your projects up and running. And print, photo, same thing. So what we're going to do in this section and lecture, it came out neither. What we're going to do in this lecture is we're going to create a poster. So you could start by clicking on this tabloid size. It's going to give us 11 inches wide by 17 inches tall. It sets the resolution to 300 dpi, and our color mode is currently in RGB. We're going to want to set this to CMYK before we go to press with this. And what I'm going to do now is go ahead and pause this video, this update to this video, and splice it back to where I explain all of this. It'll make sense in a second, but I just want to make sure that you guys are seeing the most current updates from Adobe. All right, let's go ahead and define and talk about resolution first. So this is a term you're going to use universally no matter what application you're using. So it's important that we get this before we get too far down the road. So resolution, it's a measurement of the output quality of an image. Usually it's in terms of samples, pixels, dots, or lines per inch. The terminology varies depending on the intended output device. So for example, if we were going to talk about screen resolution, we'd talk about PPI, or pixels per inch. If we're going to talk about print, in this case our poster, it would be DPI, or dots per inch, basically dots of color, dots of ink on the page. So for every inch, how many dots of there? So every square inch. So in this case, 300 dots for every square inch on our paper. Often images are referred to as high resolution, or high res, or low resolution, low res. So this poster is going to be a high resolution file. It's going to have 300 dots per inch, whereas some of the web-based projects we'll do down the road will be a low res at 72 dots per inch. So if you tried to print that low res image and there's only 72 dots per inch, it's going to look really jagged and what we call pixelated, where it doesn't look smooth and the colors don't look very good. Now at a distance it might look fine, and that's actually a trick we use with banner design or bus wraps or things that have to be really, really big. If you get up really close and look at those print projects, you'll notice you can see the dots. They're actually printed low res, and the reason is because your viewing distance is so far back, your eyes actually blend those colors together. If we tried to print a high resolution file at 300 dpi and it was huge, like the size of a bus wrap, the file would be so big your computer would crash to get it out. So we use a low res file so that way it doesn't get too big, so you can print it, and then we let our eyes blend it at a distance. So hopefully that clears up resolution. Now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the color modes. The reason why this is important is because we have two different mediums we're working with. You're either working with screen or you're working with print, and they both handle colors very differently. So unfortunately, you're designing on a computer and it's shining light into your eyes. But when we print this, we're printing ink on a paper that is then reflecting light. So the way that the printers behave compared to your screen are going to produce different color results. So in order to achieve the closest color match from what you see on screen to what you see on print, it's important that we pay attention to what color modes we're using. All right, so the first two that I really want to talk to you about, I know there's a couple others in Photoshop here that you see in this menu, but RGB and CMYK, those are the two that you're really going to be working with the most. RGB we use for print, for screen-based projects. So it stands for red, green, and blue. And basically those are lights. If you look really close at your screen or at your TV, you'll see little LEDs shining. So you've got a red, a green, and a blue. And depending on how bright they are, if they're all on all the way, you actually get a white light. And then print, we have CMYK, which stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So think of that like mixing inks on a paper, or maybe finger painting or painting, right? When you mix those colors together, you can achieve different results. So for example, cyan is like a blue color, magenta is kind of like a pinkish color. When you mix them together, you get more of a purple color. So same theory applies to what you've probably learned in traditional art. So we're going to use cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, CMYK, for print projects. So while you're looking at this on Photoshop, it's going to display RGB colors because it automatically corrects that for you. But when you set it to a printer, they only have cyan, magenta, yellow, and black to print from those ink tanks. They don't have RGB colors to mix. So we need to convert the file to CMYK to get the most consistent print results. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's go ahead and dive back into the project. Okay, so now that we've defined our color modes, let's go ahead and get back to this new window dialog box here and make sure our settings are correct. So we're making a print project. So just to verify, we've got our width and our height set to inches. We've got our resolution at 300. And we've got our color mode set to CMYK. Looks good to me. Let's go ahead and hit OK to open up our new canvas to get started. Now before we do anything else, make sure you save this. So I'm going to go to File and hit Save As. And then let's give us a name. Typically what I'll do is call it whatever the thing is. So in this case, it's a poster. And then I might even give it the size too. So this one's going to be 11 by 17. And then when we make other sizes, I might name it 8.5 by 11 or whatever, just so it's easy to tell what I'm making right out of the gate. Make sure your format is set to Photoshop. That way you can come back and edit it later. When we're all said and done, you can export things like JPEGs or TIFFs or different file formats, but we want to leave this as a native Photoshop file so we can come back and make edits over time. Now, I've already got a folder on my desktop called Poster, and I structure my files like this. You don't have to yet. We'll talk more about this as we go, but set up your design. I've got mine in a design files folder, and I put it in a folder called PSD. So these are all of my design files that I need to make this project. My file sent is where I put things when it's ready to go and I've sent the project to print or to a client. And then my assets folder is where I collect ideas and photos and fonts and things like that. So we'll talk more about that as we go, but for right now, I'm just put this in my design files folder called PSD. I named it poster 11 by 17, and I will go ahead and hit save. Okay, this is a great place for us to push pause, and we'll go ahead and start pushing pixels around in the next video.
In this lesson, what we're going to do is pull in some of the photography we want to use and start building our general layout. So first things first, what I typically do is I'll open up Safari or Chrome or whatever happens to be the browser of choice for that week, and I'll usually do a Google search. So in this case, we're just going to look for a band poster. and then I'll choose images up here on the top. So I just want to see all the images available. And you can see right away that there are a ton of really creative band posters, which is part of the reason why we're doing this in our first exercise. It's something fun. It's something that will teach you how to use brushes, textures, typography, photography, and use all these different pieces to create something fun that you enjoy. So what we're going to do right now is just briefly look at some different ideas that might be inspiring. And when I look at poster ideas or any idea for anything that I'm trying to research, I usually am looking at either fonts that inspire me, or I'm looking at color schemes that I like, or layout designs that I like. So for example, looking at this real quick, I like that it's not just straight horizontal text on this waterfront poster. It's got kind of a, not quite a 45-degree angle, but it's at an angle which adds some visual interest. This Lincoln Park poster, I like the color, and I like that the guys are kind of cut out. So what I'm going to do is things that when I find something I like, I either do one of a couple things. I'll either right click and I will save the image to like an ideas folder. So if I come in here and I'll make a new folder and I'll just call it ideas, I'll hit save. Or what I can do is I can click and just drag an image straight over the Photoshop icon in my dock, hover until it comes up, hover until it comes back there, and then let go, and I dropped it right into my workspace. Now in Photoshop, the way you can scale things up, the shortcut is Command T or Control T on a PC. So the way you would find that, if you forget, it's up under here, Edit, and we're looking for Free Transform, and that shortcut right there is Command T. So what it does is it gives me these little handles that I can start to drag this up larger. And Photoshop will let you skew an image, right? So we want to keep it proportionate. So what we're going to do is hold down the Shift key, and now when I click and drag, it stays in the right perspective here. So when I get it where I want it, I can hit the Enter key, or I can hit this little check mark up here to finish my transform. And I'm just going to start building in a bunch of layers here into this poster file, just to start getting some ideas and things I can work with. So I'll come back over here to Safari, and let's just kind of see what else we've got here. Things that inspire me. This Mumford & Sons, I kind of like how they've got this illustrative instead of a photographic poster. I like the illustration behind it. So I'm going to right click, I'll save image as, and I'll throw it in that ideas folder so I can refer to it later. Usually I'd work one way or the other. I'd either save it into that folder, or I would click and drag and drop it right into Photoshop for me to work with later. And I let go too soon. Let me try that one more time. Click and drag, hold, bring it back. Okay, so we could spend a lot of time researching and grabbing a lot of things. So what's best practice, at least for me, is almost to literally set a timer for maybe 10 minutes. Otherwise, you can start to get overwhelmed with the possibilities and what you could do, and all of a sudden you lose your entire day just looking for images or just trying to find inspiration for different things. There's one I saw earlier. Oh, here it is. I really like this, I don't know, I just thought it was really cool. So I'm going to click on that, right click, save image as. We'll throw it in that folder so I can refer to it later if I need to. And in this case, I'm just going to throw it right into Photoshop. There we go. Command T, and then I'm holding down the Shift key, and I'm also holding the Alt key. By holding down the Alt key, let's see, if I just hold down the Shift key, it anchors it to the top left, but if I hold down the Alt key, it scales out from the center. So just, I don't know, it's just faster. It helps me scale it up faster. I'll hit Return, or actually in this case, my Enter key. Okay, and now you can see on the right, I've got my layers. I'm going to Shift click. So right now, layer 3 is selected. I'll hold down Shift, and I'll click down layer 1, and it'll select everything in between. And then I'm going to hit this little folder icon down here. And what that's going to do is put it into a folder. I could have also hit Command G on a Mac or Control G on a PC. And now I've got my group, and I can double click on this, and I'll just give it a name. It's really good to keep your file organized. We'll call it Ideas. Okay, and then now's a really good time to save. So Command S, Control S on a PC. Always save your work. It should be like a nervous twitch that just happened so you don't lose anything. All right, so the reasons why I like these. This blue color was inspiring. I also liked the, I don't know, the organic nature of this is creative. This Mumford & Sons, again, I liked how the high contrast of this darker illustration against the white background. And then this Lincoln Park image here, I'm just going to drag this up a little bit so I can see it. I liked that they've got, if you look closer, the guy, so this blue triangle that kind of interacts, these layers merge together to kind of color them, And I think we're going to probably take that approach on this poster. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and turn off that ideas, and we're going to pretend you'll have this photo in your assets file that I'll provide for you. But I'm just going to drag this image. We're going to pretend like this is an artist that's coming to a venue here, and we've got to make a poster for him. You can find this image in your downloads, or this is on a website called pexels.com, so PEXELS.com. And he's right here. So what we could do is click on it and then click free download, and then it'll bring up to this window. I could right click and then save image to downloads. Okay, so I've got that one, and then I've got a couple other photos that I found in pexels.com that were inspiring, that might work for this project. We've got some guitars, and then we've got this soundboard here. So what I'm going to do with these, same deal. I'll right click, I'll save image to downloads. I'll click on this one, right click, save image to downloads. So I'm starting to gather all my assets, okay? So we've brought him into our workspace, and now what we're going to do is, in the next lesson, we're going to cut him out or isolate this photo. So we'll crop him out, and that's one of the between layers, using layers in Photoshop, and making really good selections. Those are the two probably most critical skills you'll learn in Photoshop, because once you master those, you can really do just about anything and composite anything together. So we're going to go ahead and shut this down for this lesson, and the next lesson we'll dive into making selections and starting to work with all of these assets we've started to collect. Now that we've got some ideas to pursue for our poster, we've got our photo of the main artist, it's time to start building up layers. But before we do any of that, we have to start isolating things. So imagine that this is really truly, let's say it's a 4x6 photo. Anything below this layer is not going to show through. So this little icon down here next to the trash can is a new layer icon. If I click on it, I've got a new layer to work with. I'm clicking back on this photo. If I command click, so I'm holding on command or control on a PC and I click, it'll put the layer below it. So just a little quick shortcut here. Instead of just clicking a new layer and putting it at the top, I want this layer below, and the reason why, I'm going to come up here to my colors and just get a bright green right here. I'm going to hit Alt Delete. Alt Delete is the shortcut to fill your foreground color to the canvas. If I hit Command Delete, it fills it with whatever's behind here. So this background color that's white. So I basically fill this layer with white. I'm going to hit Alt Delete again. I could go to Edit Fill right here, or Shift F5. That's another way to do the same thing. So one thing you'll discover in Photoshop, there's probably 100 different ways to do the same thing. So these are just shortcuts that I've discovered that I use in my workflow. So Alt Delete, the whole reason I wanted to show you this is I've just filled this new layer with green. So if I turn off this photo layer, you can see my canvas is green behind it. Turn that back on. So this whole white area needs to go away, right? Or something else we can explore are layer styles. So right here we've got normal, but I can play with different layer styles. And what a layer style is, it controls how whatever layer you're selecting interacts with the layer below it. So right now I'm just clicking on it. Multiply is one we'll probably use a lot, and you'll see what it does. Multiply hides the lighter tones but keeps the darker tones revealed, and then merges that with the layer below it. So you know, if we change this canvas color, let's say to, in this case, a purple, I'll add a new layer. I'll just click on it, so it put it above the other layer, and I'll hit Alt Delete to fill my foreground color. So now he looks purple, but maybe I just want my background to be, you know, purple or green or a texture or a photo, and I don't want him to be part of that. So I'm going to come back over here, and you could explore more. So here's another shortcut. Make sure your Move tool is selected. Okay, with that selected on the layer you want, you can hit the Shift and plus or minus keys to cycle through. So right here, as I hit Shift plus, I'm basically scrolling through all these options without having to click on each one at a time. So sometimes, and that's kind of a creative effect right there, but sometimes, you know, that's how I'll find something I want to work with. So I'll just hit Shift plus and I'll just cycle through real quick and just see what different layer styles affect my image in different ways. In this case, I'm going to start with normal because I'd like to keep him black and white, keep his skin tone how it is. I want to just cut him out. So this is one of the most critical skills you'll learn in Photoshop. There's a lot of different ways to cut images out. One of the rough ways, I can hit the letter L and get my lasso tool, and I could literally start to just, you know, we'll just do a super rough cut here. Whatever I trace around, I'll get what we call these marching ants. Okay, so I've made a selection, and there's a lot of different ways to isolate the selection. I could delete it. In this case, I usually hit Command J, which jump cuts it up to its own layer. So if I turn off the original, what I've done now is I've brought this layer to the front. Obviously it's a terrible selection, and it's not editable, or it's not a smart object. It's destructive editing. Like, I can't ever bring back here where I didn't make a good selection. So making a selection with the marching ants tool and then just jump cutting it isn't probably the best way to work. A better way to work would be to, if you make a selection, to add a mask. So down here next to the FX, we've got this little square with a circle in it. This is a mask, and when I click on it, it remembers what's behind it, but now we're masking it. So anything black hides, anything that's white reveals. And I can click left or right here. If I click on the main image now, anything I would be doing would be on the actual image. If I click on this mask, now I'm working on the mask. So for example, let's say I want to refine my selection. I could get the brush tool. I hit the letter B, get the brush tool, and I'm going to go to Window, down to Brush, and now I can change different settings, like how hard the brush is. I can select right here maybe a softer brush. I'll turn my spacing down. I'll bring my size up a little bit, and I've also got some other things going on. I'm going to uncheck these for right now. These are things we'll get into a little bit later. So I've got a soft brush, so I could actually come in here, and if I paint with black, so I'm painting with my foreground color, which is black, on the mask, so black is hiding. If I hit X, X is a shortcut right here to toggle which is in front. So if my white chip is in front, now I'm painting with white, and white reveals. So you can come back in here, and you could really, I mean, this is one way to work. You could zoom in and really, refine your selection exactly like you want it. Okay, that's one way to work. I'm going to go ahead and turn off this mask. I can hold down Shift and click, which just hides the mask. It's still there. Shift click to bring it back, or I can drag it to the trash. Okay, now I'm back to the original image here. Another way to work, a newer tool, is this magic wand tool, which is kind of a combination. I'm sorry, not the magic wand, but the quick selection tool. It's kind of a combination between a brush and like the lasso tool, but in this case it's smart, and it detects the color around the edges, so I can kind of just drag over everything here, and it's smart enough to know what to include and what to leave. Now, a problem you run into is areas like this where there's not a lot of contrast. Technically his shirt is still over here, but if I use that tool and I try and add that, it might work. In this case, Photoshop is pretty intelligent, and it sees, but it's not perfect. There's still, down here it's having a really hard time. So, but let's say you're just trying to make a quick comp for somebody just to see if they even like it, and you don't want to spend a bunch of time cutting out this image. You could do a rough cut like this. Now, if I want to add more to this selection, right now it's really tough to see, but there's a little tiny plus sign inside of this icon. If I hold down Alt, it turns to a minus sign, and what that means is now I'm subtracting from my selection. So, oops, I took too much of his neck away, so I'll zoom in here, Command and Option. It's a shortcut for my zoom tool, or you can just click over here and zoom in anytime. And now I'm hitting spacebar to get my hand tool, which is right here. So anytime you can use your keyboard as a shortcut, that's obviously better. You'll be much faster. So Command spacebar, and now it zooms in, or Command Option spacebar, and I get my zoom out tool. Okay, so where were we? Oh yeah, we were on our quick selection tool. I'm going to hit the Alt key. I'm sorry, I'm going to leave it alone because I want to add back to this neck here. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to zoom out, spacebar, Command, and Alt to zoom out. And let's do the same thing we did last time. Let's add a little mask. All right, so this is better, a little bit better, but you can see we still didn't get everything in the shirt. The selection isn't quite right still. So this would be enough, though, if I wanted to just quickly mock it up and see if I like it. All right, so for me, the best way to work, what I end up doing all the time, is using the pen tool. So we're going to zip through this pretty quick. It's kind of a complicated tool. I just want to get the principle to you, and then this is something we'll learn more as we go. But what I'm going to do is get the pen tool, and I want to make sure path is selected instead of shape. If it's a shape, you can actually draw new shapes, and you can change the fill color, which is great. But right now, all I want to do is I just want to use it to create a path and then cut out that path. So I'm going to delete that. My shape layer is still selected. I'll hit delete, and it goes away. I'm going to hit P to get my pen tool, and I'm going to change this from a shape to a path. Okay. With the pen tool, again, it's something you'll need to practice, but you can click and drag, and then click again, and you'll notice I've got my anchor point right here is where the path starts, it's going to go towards where this handle is, so it's going to bend towards that and then get down to here where this other point is, and it's bending up because of this anchor point. If I hit Command, I can get my selection tool and grab that anchor point and bend the path. So again, these are just handles to control this Bezier curve here, is what we call it. And what I like about it is you can get really, really precise. So what we're going to do now is we're going to zip through this real quick. Over here in my paths layer, I've got that path, that work path. I'm just going to delete it. Yeah. We'll come back to my layers. All right, so here we go. I'm just going to go quick so you can see how I would do this, and then we can practice these skills more later. So if I hit the caps lock key, it changes my icon from just the pen tool to the precise marker here. So I've got my caps lock on. I'm going to zoom in real close. I'm holding down the space bar, hit Command. All right, now we're just going to start cutting this guy out here. I'll click, and then I'll drag a little bit. Now I'll hold down the Alt key to change to my this tool here. This is called the Convert Point tool, and it just helps you grab these anchor points, because otherwise what would happen is if I just hit my Command tool, see how it grabs that lower curve too and it bends this one? Well, I'm happy with this being here. Now I want to hit my Alt key to start bending this around. All right, here we go. So we're just going to zip along this line real quick. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be good enough here to get our poster going. So let's just zip through this real quick. So I click and I drag just a little bit, and the reason why is so that way my curves are a little bit softer and they're not, let's say, like if I just click like this, they're not jagged. If I click and drag, right? I'm gonna hit Command Z. Now in Photoshop, you have to hit Command Option Z or Control Alt Z to step back multiple. Otherwise, what happens if you just want to undo and you hit Command Z, it just toggles back and forth between the last thing you did. So you want to step forward or step backward by using Command Option Z. Okay. All right. So let's keep going with my selection here. Click and drag. All right, and what we're going to do now is when we get close to the hair, we're going to do a different selection method, and I'll show you that here in just a second. So we're going to keep right along his shirt, click once, and then I'll click again and drag my handle this way so my curve comes along here. I'll click out, and the reason why I'm clicking dragging this way, so my handle, man, it's really tough to see on this image, but so my handle comes this way, and that curve, which you probably can't even see, oops, it comes along that neck. Now I'm going to hit the Alt key, and I'll grab that handle, and I'm going to bring it right around here so it follows his neck. I'm going to come up towards his hair, and now what I'm going to do is zoom out real quick, and I'm just going to get close. There's another selection method to get all this hair isolated. Okay, I'll come up past the canvas, and we'll come down here around here. I'll click once, and then I'll click again and drag. Click, drag. Come down here, click, drag to bend that curve. Okay, and now I just need to close that gap. So I'll come down here, click, click, and then when I hover over that open point where we started, my cursor changes to this icon with the pen tool and then the little circle next to it, meaning we're closing that path. Okay, so I've got my path over here, and what I usually do is I double click and I'll call it something. I usually call it just cutout, and what it does, that way it saves this path in this file. Okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to hit Command Return or Control Return to turn this into a selection. You could also grab that path again, right click, and make sure you've got your pen tool selected and say Make New Selection. We'll click on that and it'll make a selection. So again, we're just getting those marching ants. Okay, now I'm going to click on my little mask tool, and I've got this nearly perfect selection if I zoom out. Okay, so the other thing I would do to polish this up a little bit, I need to add this little chunk here, so I'll just grab my pen tool and I'll start, same thing, I'll just cut them out real quick. Okay, close enough. I hit Command Return. I've got my selection. Now, because I'll come onto this mask and I can fill it with black. So remember when I was filling with green and purple, I was holding Alt Delete to fill it with black. Well, make sure I've got, you can see this subtle little box, make sure I've got that selected around my selection. Black's on top. I'll hit Alt Delete, and I've added that to my selection here. Okay, so now we've got a pretty good selection. Now what we're going to do in the next lesson is we're going to really refine this hair. So go ahead and play with this on your image, play with that pen tool, practice making your selections, and in the next lesson we're going to learn how to make really difficult selections with things like hair. Now that we've learned how to make basic selections, we're going to try and tackle hair, which is a much more complicated selection. Obviously, we don't want to try and cut out by hand all these little strands of hair, and luckily Photoshop makes this easy for us. So as I look at this though, I realize I probably could have cut this a little bit closer to make Photoshop a little bit happier about life here. So what I'm going to do is hit the letter L to get my lasso tool, okay, and I'm just going to make a closer selection that's a little bit closer to where his hair actually is, and this will help us out here in just a second. You'll see why. I'm going to come back over here, and then as soon as I let go, it closes that gap. I'm going to make sure that's selected. I'll hit Alt Delete, Command D to deselect, or I could have gone up to Select, deselect, okay. And now I'm just going to keep working around here. And the reason why I'm only doing these little chunks and I'll hit Alt Delete is because if I had to try and trace all the way around, and then I'll hold down the space bar to move, and then keep coming over here, then I have to, if I just let go here, it closes the gap as a circle across his forehead, and I don't want to do that. So what I would have to do then is come back all the way around. I'm still holding down on the mouse. I hit the space bar to move. I'm still holding down on the mouse to basically make this like loop shape, okay? So that's why I'm just quickly grabbing little chunks, hit Alt Delete, again making sure I'm still on my mask layer, and again just trying to get rid of some of that extra white space that I left. So over here it's not too bad, but we'll just remove a little bit of it, getting it closer to the hair that I want to select. And the reason why is what we're going to do now is I'm going to hit Command and click right on this mask. We hold on Command and click on the icon. It brings the selection back. And that's a shortcut actually you can use on any layer. If I Command click on anything, it'll put a selection around that layer. Quick detour, let's say I have a shape here, this random shape that I've drawn. If I hit Command and click on that layer, it puts a selection on whatever pixels it sees in there. Okay, so I'll delete that layer, I'll click back on my mask, I'll hold down Command, so I get that little tiny, I don't know if you can even see it, but that square on my hand cursor. I'll click once and my marching ants, my selection comes back. Alright, now I'm going to hit the letter M to make sure my square selection tool is selected, and the reason why is because when I hit that letter M key, let me go back to, let's see what was on, maybe the pen tool. You see I've got pen tool options up here in my heads up display. By hitting the letter M, I've got my selection tool, or one of my selection tools. I could do that on the lasso as well, but what you see is up here I've got this refine edge option that shows up when I have the lasso tool or the selection tool.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. Let me cut in on this lecture real quick. I have an update for you. I was about to show you how the refine edge tool worked, but in the latest version of Photoshop, when you go to hit the letter M, instead of this saying refine edge, it now says select and mask. The other thing that I'm about to show you is when I made this video, this layer was a smart object, and I found I've had better luck with my selections if I right click on this and rasterize the layer. So let me go ahead and deselect this, Command D to deselect. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say rasterize layer. Now with that rasterize, I'll Command click on my shape or on my mask layer again. I'll hit the letter M, and now I'm going to click up here on select and mask. Now what I'm going to do over here on the left hand side, I'll hit the letter R, but this brings up my refine edge brush tool, and now I can start painting in here, and you'll notice you'll get a much better selection right away, and that should help you out a lot. I've been getting a lot of questions about this, and I hope this clears it up. Go ahead and watch the rest of this lecture. There's some great tips and tricks, and then be sure to catch the video that I made that gives you even more detail about the new Photoshop Select and Mask tool. All right, continue on. Thanks, guys.
You see I've got pen tool options up here in my heads up display. By hitting the letter M, I've got my selection tool, or one of my selection tools. I could do that on the lasso as well, but what you see is up here I've got this refine edge option that shows up when I have the lasso tool or the selection tool. I can click on that refine edge, and now it brings up this dialog box here where I can paint over the edges, and Photoshop is smart enough to know what's dark and what's the hair that it's trying to keep, and I'm just kind of guiding it to where I want it to make the selection for me. So I just kind of paint over the hair a little bit, and look at that, it just knocks out everything behind that's not hair. So this refining edge tool is amazing. It really saves a ton of time. So I can click over here and just kind of drag around the image to finish my selection. And in this case, this is why you can see it's kind of struggling with this orange edge a little bit, which is why I went through and cleaned up that white selection just so it was a little bit tighter in on things. Okay, and I could spend a lot of time doing this. And if you have a hard time seeing what it's actually doing, I can click on this view button and I could put it, say, on white. In this case, it's a white background, so maybe I want to put it on black and see what my selection is doing. You can see we've got a little bit of bleed through. I'll let my computer catch up here. Let's put it back on the overlay. Okay, so we're coming through and we're just getting the selection refined, and you could spend a lot more time on this. For the sake of this video, I don't want to linger too far here. I just want to show you the principle of how we could do this. So once we get it close to how we like it, I'm using the space bar again. I'm holding down the space bar to get my hand tool to kind of move around and see if it's close enough. And then once we're done, the output, we could put it to a selection, to a layer mask, to a new layer. Right now I'm just going to leave it as a selection. I'll hit OK. And I want to add it to this other selection I have. Now here's the catch. It's selecting everything on the inside. So if I hit Command Delete and fill it with white, well, that doesn't really do me any good because I've already got that selection there. If I hit Alt Delete and fill it with black, well, that doesn't help me either because now we're filling the inside of my selection with black and it hides my image. So I'm going to hit Command Z. So what we really need to do is invert our selection. So if I zoom out, you can see we've selected the image here, but honestly what I want to delete is this white space around it. So I want to select everything but that. So I'll come up to Select, Inverse, or I could have hit Shift Command I, and now my selection is everything except for the middle. So I can add that to my mask here. I'll click here, I'm going to fill it with black, so I'll hit Alt Delete, and now you can see I've got a pretty good selection of his hair. And again, this is a man, look at that. You can see it's almost perfect. I could have done a better job up here, but we're just trying to blitz through this so you can get the principles and see how it's going. So once that selection is how you like it, now is the fun part. We can start adding images behind or working with layers to bring them in front of or behind different text elements, and we're going to go ahead and do that in the next lesson.
Since I've launched the graphic design course, Adobe's actually made some changes that affects this tutorial that you're watching. So what I want to do is two things. First, I want to show you the difference, specifically the select and mask options that they've now added. And I also want to show you where to find all of the changes that Adobe has made and how to stay current with that. So the first things first is let's jump over here to this Creative Cloud icon, and we can click on apps and we can see all the different applications we have installed. We can see which version we have. So this one that I've updated or upgraded to is 2015.5. We can click on View Tutorials, which will launch your browser and bring you here to the Adobe Photoshop landing page. We can click on the What's New, and that's going to bring you to this page where you can see chronologically all the changes that have happened. So there's a lot of really cool things you definitely need to check out, but specifically what I want to show you is the selection and masking space. So if I click on See How It Works, you can actually check out this page, and there's a much more in-depth tutorial if you want to learn all the bells and whistles. But what I want to show you is for some of you who have the older applications, older software, if you go to refine your mask in your selection, when I have the, I'm just going to hit the letter M, and I've got my rectangular marquee, which in my options bar is going to bring up the select and mask option. Now on the older versions of Photoshop, you'll probably still see the refine edge if you haven't upgraded yet. So I've kind of shown you how to do that in the last video. Now what I want to show you is the new select and mask space. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and click on select and mask, and it opens up kind of a new window where we've got some options down the left hand side. We've got this brush here where we can add more to our selection. We've got this brush below where we can refine our selection, and then a few other options which honestly I haven't had to use too much yet. So what I want to show you, what's really powerful, is over here in the view mode we have this onion skin mode, and they still have the other options that we had in the refine mask where we could put the layer on black or white and really get a feel for what's going on. But this onion skin mode is great because you can see the layers below, and I can control the transparency as well. I can scrub it to the left, or I can scrub it all the way to the right to control what I'm seeing. So right now it's 100% opaque, so I'm seeing my selection and I'm not really seeing anything else. I'm not really seeing the blend, but I can back this off just a little bit, and I'll notice that I'm actually missing a little bit of the hair here, which I wouldn't have noticed if I was just looking at the 100% mask. So I'm going to dial that down a little bit, I'm going to come up here and choose my quick selection brush, and I can just basically click just once right in there, click once right in there, and it pretty much does a good job of adding in that piece that I missed. Now the next thing I want to do is jump over here and click my refine brush, and it's gotten a lot better in this refine selection, or this select and mask box. So as I click and drag, Photoshop does an incredible job of finding all these little stray hairs, and I'll just kind of click a couple times, drag over here, click and drag over here, maybe a little bit down here. And if I accidentally get too much across the top of his head right here, those white highlights blow out and actually looks like it's transparent. But really we know that that shouldn't be. So what I'm gonna do is hit the Alt key and then kind of brush over that a little bit. And again, I'm using the refine brush tool over here. And then if I drag this back up to 100%, you can see I've got a really good selection. There's still a couple pieces down here if I wanted to be really picky about it, that I can refine that a little bit more. And then once I've got it just how I want it, I can come back over here, and if I need to, now right now I'm using an image, I'm kind of cheating because the hair is on already a pretty light background, so it makes it pretty easy. But if you've got a difficult background, you can use some of these options to get a better selection. So whether you need to smooth it out, maybe feather it a little bit, or even add a lot of contrast, that might help get a better selection against whatever background you have. Or you could even shift the edge. If I scrub this all the way to the left, you can see that it sucks that image, that selection in, or if I scrub all the way to the right, it really blows it out and gives it a lot more space around my selection. But I found that Photoshop does a really good job right out of the box with the default settings for most images. So these options are there to play with, but again, I would start with just the defaults and see how it does. Now once you've got that just how you want it, if you just see this right here, output settings, we can click the little twirl down arrow and we can control exactly how this is going to be exporting our layer. You might need to click on decontaminate colors. Now where this would come in handy, in this case I've got a black and white photo, so I really don't need to use it too much, but it did clean up this hair a little bit. So I had a little bit of white coming through, and let's say this was shot on a green screen, or in some other setting, maybe there's a red light and there's some color cast onto the edges here. If I click the decontaminate colors, it'll help really knock out those edges in a way that you won't have that issue. Does a pretty good job with that. Now once you've done that, we'll go ahead and click on how you want to spit this out. Now I typically would just leave this as well. Now that I click decontaminate colors, I don't have the option to keep it as a layer mask, which is typically how I would keep it. Since I click on that, it's grayed that out, and it's going to make a new layer with my mask. And the reason why, let me go ahead and click OK, is because Photoshop has actually adjusted the colors around the edge of this photo. So it's actually manipulated the photo, and it saves the original just in case I'm not happy with it, if I ever need to go back to it. So anyway, I hope that helps, and I hope that clears some things up for you. I just want to take the time real quick to say thank you so much for signing up for this course. I hope you're learning a ton, and I'm going to do my best to keep this updated and as current as possible. If you ever come across any other changes like this that Adobe has made, please let me know. Feel free to hit me up on the Q&A or direct message through the Udemy platform. I try to get back to everybody within 24 hours when I can. Again, I just thank you so much for taking the time to join this class, and let me know if you have questions or if you need any help, or especially if anything has changed. All right, good luck, and here we go.
All right, in the previous lesson we refined the hair, and it wasn't quite perfect yet. It looked a little bit like this, at least it did for me, and I went ahead and spent a little bit more time cleaning it up. You can do that on your own time if you want to, but we're going to continue on. We're going to add some typography. Obviously the event details are important, as well as maybe some images, and perhaps let's change the background from purple to something that fits a little bit better. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to hit the letter T to get my type tool. I'll click once in here and I'll start typing in. In this case, I've already got my details, so I'll copy this. We'll pretend like this guy's name is John Singer. Oops. So I'll click in here, Command V to paste, Enter to commit my layer. And the reason why is when this is still selected after I've pasted it, if I try and hit the letter V tool, V to get my other tool, or any other tools, obviously those are all characters, so none of my shortcuts work when I'm inside of the text here. So when I hit Command V, I'll hit Enter on my 10 keypad, or I can click on this little check mark up here to now commit that text, and now I can use any shortcuts I want. In this case, I hit the letter V to move it around. Remember that shortcut Command T to do the free transform, and this will let me scale it up. Now, if you get tired of having to hold the Shift key to keep it in perspective, to keep the ratio, how it's supposed to be, you can come up here and click on this little link icon between the width and the height. I'll click on that. And now, no matter where I scrub or drag, it'll stay the same perspective without skewing it. I can also scrub right here on the W, on the width and the height, to make this bigger or smaller. But in this case, I just want to drag it a little bit larger. And I'm just going to stick with Helvetica for this font. Quick side note, now this is with the whole course as a whole. If you want to become a great graphic designer, you need to keep studying, keep learning everything you can. So what I thought I would show you is this movie Helvetica, right? You can rent it on Amazon or buy it from Amazon. On Netflix, if you have the DVD subscription, you could get it from there too. I'd highly recommend checking that out. It's great. Great little documentary about the font Helvetica, where it came from, and some designers love it, some designers hate it, but it's worth knowing whatever you decide to choose in your design, why you chose it, not just throw it out there. So what we're going to do now, I hit T to get my type tool again, and I'm just going to click right between that space, click and drag. I'll hit return to put this on 2 lines, and now what I'm going to do is hit Command A to highlight all of it, and now Command Option, and then the up or down arrow keys changes what we call the leading. Back in the day when they used to set fonts, they would actually put physical pieces of lead between the font characters. And if you watch that Helvetica movie, you'll learn more about that. Anyway, so we're changing the width, which again is called leading. Another way to do that, and again I'm holding Command Option and the up or down arrow, Control Alt up and down on a PC. I can also open up my type window. If I go to Window and down to Character, it adds that little shortcut here to my menu bar, and you can see we can change the font, the size. Right here is our leading. So with this guy selected, I can scrub here and change that gap size. Okay, so that's another way to make that change. What I was doing, I had it all selected, Command A, and again Command Option up or down, and you can see as I do that, this number over here is changing. Okay, so again, shortcuts will help you blaze through designs much faster and get your ideas out as quick as possible. I also have right here, I typed it out lowercase, but I hit Command Shift K to toggle on this all caps. So I want this to be all caps. Once I get my change where I want it, I'll hit Enter. And now I hit Command T. I want to scale it up a little bit. Now let's pretend like this guy is super famous and everybody knows him. He's some kind of a rock star singer. So we can get away with, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. And now if I hold down Shift, it goes by a factor of 10 right here. So if I hold down Shift and go up and down, it's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Okay, it goes faster. Or I can take my finger off of Shift and go basically 1 point at a time. Okay, so I'm going to stack that right on top of itself. Hit the letter V to get my Move tool. And I am going to move this up behind. And when you did this, your type layer was probably on top here. And again, that's where layers are so awesome, because I can come over here, I'll click on him, and I'll drag this up above. Or you can hit Command and the left bracket or right bracket keys. Those are the ones right next to your letter P. So if you look at your letter P on your keyboard, the very next one, that square bracket, if I hit Command and that, it'll send my layer below. Or if I hit the next one, it'll send my layer above. If I come over here to Layer, and let's find that Arrange down here, this is what I'm doing. These are those shortcuts, okay, to move those layers up or down. So we've got him in front, and again, let's pretend like this guy is super famous. Everybody knows him, so we could get away with really cropping this to where it's almost unlegible, or maybe you lose some of his letters, or maybe you want to keep it to where if somebody's not familiar with this artist, it's still kind of legible. But that's where you have to choose. Do you want to be cutting edge and do something crazy, which would be kind of cool, kind of like a magazine style, or if it needs to be more of a functional piece where you don't want any information to be lost. So that's up to you as a graphic designer who's communicating to make those decisions. Okay, so we've got our text where we want it. Let's go ahead and bring in the other text here. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just copy all of this, Command C, come over here, and I'll click once. There's a couple ways we can work. I'll click once and paste this, which brings it all in like this, not inside of a text box, so I don't have the option to reflow my text. Or with my text tool, I can click and drag, and it makes a box that then my text fits within. So the reason why that would be important is, let's say this is bigger, and I'm using Command Shift and the period key, or Command Shift comma, to make it bigger or smaller. Okay, and inside of a text box, as I click and drag, it will reflow my text to fit in that box. This is great for paragraphs and things like that. So again, it is either click once and paste with my type tool, or click and drag to make that box. Okay, and these are all little things we'll learn more as we go, but just so you know what I'm doing, delete that. Okay, so here we've got the details. Now here's where you would not want the details to hide behind his shoulder, otherwise people won't show up on time. So we need to find a creative way to enclose this information and bring it in front. So first and foremost, I'll hit Command Shift and the right bracket key, so it's not the one right next to the letter P, but the one after that, to bring this layer all the way to the front. Again, that was under Layer, Arrange, Bring to Front. That's what I did. Okay, so we've got it all the way in the front, and we've got our type in here, and we're going to use the same font, Helvetica. And let's go ahead and pause right here, and in the next lesson what we'll do is we'll work with shapes and textures to start really bringing this thing to life. All right, we're getting real close here on our poster. We've got our text in, we've got the image of the artist, the content, or the event details. So we're really close. Obviously, we need to clean it up a little bit and now add our polish to it to make it look like we want it to look. This is where it can be a giant time suck. You could spend hours on this thing, or you could just call it good, and the details are on there and we know who it is and we're good to go. But let's go ahead and push this a little bit further. Let's learn a few more things that we can do in Photoshop, and we'll go from there. Again, we're going to blitz through this pretty quick, and you can take as much time as you want with these assets to make something creative that you love. So let's go ahead and think about this text. What do we want to do with it? We've got a couple issues here. One is it's a lot of text, right? And it's dark, so it doesn't fit well over his shirt. We need to find a way to either put it in an enclosure or bump the contrast, or do something to where this functions, form and function, right? It might look cool, but will people actually show up to the venue because they can see the text? The other issue I see here is the photo we had, his head was already cropped to the top, so I can't really pull him down without his head looking like it's been chopped on top, and that leaves us with two options down here. So he's not quite big enough to fill this image, so I can either, one, Command T to get my free transform tool and just scale him up. I could skew it, which obviously looks terrible, so hold on that Shift key, and just enough just to make him just a little bit bigger that he goes the full width of the image. That could be the best solution, especially if we start, putting our type, filling our type down here so it fits around his arm. That might be a cool way to go about it, right? That fits really nice around the shoulder. I could keep pushing the details, or maybe make this second chunk a little bit smaller. I'll hit Command X to cut that. And what that does, it cuts it and also copies it to your clipboard. So now if I click once here and hit Command V, just that address is down here. So maybe, this is going to be a big poster. So if this is really an 11 by 17 and it's this big, that's still technically legible. If people want to see where it's at, they can see this, and that's good to go, right? So maybe we're done. Maybe this is all we need for this poster, or let's push it a little bit further. So another way we could do, let's say that we didn't want to make it that much bigger and he's going to be this short. So now what we need to do is find something to put over the top. So we could get our shape tool, hit the letter U. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle. It's going to fill with black currently, or I could match my design a little better, hit the I to get the eyedropper tool and select that lighter gray from his shirt. And now when I hit the letter U, it pulls in that lighter gray color. I'll click and drag to get my rectangle. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can see this a little better. Okay, and now I'm just hit Command T to drag this right where I want it to go, and it just needs to be big enough to hide his arm. Well, one of two things, either big enough to hide this gap down here, or maybe a little bit bigger if we decide we want to put our text. It's kind of tough to see my design right here on this gray background, so here's a tip for Photoshop. I can right click on this canvas and make it a different color if you need to see your image a little bit better. Okay, so maybe we grab this this text and we put it in line. So I'm gonna hit space and then I'll hit shift and the pipe divider, it's right below your delete key or right above your return key. Hit space, hit delete to bring that other line up next to itself. So there's that little pipe divider I put in there. Maybe I'll add another space between those so it's easier to see. Over here I'll click, double space, hit that pipe divider, double space, hit the delete to bring the text. Okay, so now it's all up in one line. I can do a couple things. With this text tool selected, I can hit Command Delete to fill it with that background white. Or I could have double or triple clicked in here and selected a color from up here. Or I can hover anywhere in the image and select the background. So if we wanted to match this current purple color, we could do that. I'm just going to hit Command Delete to fill it with that white text. So here, here's another option. Maybe it's just super simple. We've got our date, time. There we go. And then we've got our information down here. Maybe we need to add a web address or something else down to this information. And again, that could be a poster. You could be done there. Let's push this a little bit further though. Another option, maybe to make it more creative. I'm looking at his shoulder, and it's kind of, let's see, if I were to, let's see real quick. I'll just draw a quick rectangle and I'll fill it with some bright obnoxious color so you can see it. Let's pretend you wanted to match that angle. I could, here's what I did. Command T, and then I hover down here and my cursor changes to that curved arrow, which means I can turn this. Okay, so I'm just kind of matching the angle of that shoulder. And that's another tip too. When you're designing things, look at the elements around you and see what things you can work in to create consistency. So now I'm going to get my direct selection tool right here. So I can grab these little anchor points. I'll click once. And here, this will be easier to see on his shirt. If I click once here, this one is solid, so I'm just selecting that one point. Or I can shift click multiple points and move those around. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this little guy and the other one down here, maybe, if it'll let me. There we go. And I'm just going to, oh, come on. Try it again. Click once, shift click over here. And I'm going to drag straight down to kind of create this cool little shape. And then I'm going to hit Command T. I'm going to zoom way the heck out and zoom it up or scale it up a little bit. And again, I'm just trying to match the angle of his shirt. I'll bring it down just enough to where it covers that arm, or maybe to where it feels good on the side as far as good balance. I'll turn off that other layer. And so here's another thing we could do. We could stack the text over here. And we could bring this information down here. I'll highlight it all and I'll align it to the right. And I don't like this angle against this angle, so maybe what I'll do is I'll bring the time up on this line. Okay, and now this angle and this angle match, and that's starting to feel pretty good. And then we can do the same thing to this text here. So you can see we could endlessly start to refine things, and this is how you work. You just start to play with things and see what you like. And I'm going to align this to the right. And something else to pay attention to is what we would call guides or the grid. So, if things aren't quite lined up right, maybe that's on purpose, maybe that's a choice, but whenever possible, pay attention to the other elements on your page. In this case, I can click right, if you don't see the ruler, hit Command R or go to View and turn on your rulers. Okay, and now what I can do is pull down a guide. I'll hold down Alt, and now I've changed it from a horizontal guide to a vertical guide. All right, and now I can make sure that my text and all my assets line up in the same spot. So just little tricks like this will set you apart from the other designers as far as keeping things in line. All right, so we're playing with this layout a little bit, and you can see how you can start to work with the layout. In the next lesson, what we're going to do now is try some different background elements, maybe try some brushes and textures to finish this thing off. Okay, we're getting really close on our poster now. Now we just need to add those finishing touches of either textures or background elements. Before we do that, let's just pretend like this poster was exactly what the client asked for, or this artist or whatever. But let's say it's not quite what you were feeling and you hate it. That happens a lot as a graphic designer. You might be, might have to appease somebody else who wants something specific, and let's say purple was his favorite color, but it just looks terrible. So what I would do in this situation, I would go ahead and save where we're at, and because I've been recording these videos, I've been forgetting to save, but make sure you save along the way. So we save this, and then usually what I would do in this situation, if I'm happy with one look, I would save it here and just hold on to this file, and then I would hit Command-Shift-S or Control-Shift-S on a PC and save this state as something else. So if I love my 17 poster, and I might put dash and then V2. as my second version or another idea that I had. So I'll hit save, and now no matter what I do to this, I can always go back to this point in time where, you know, maybe it's exactly what they wanted. Again, it's not my favorite at all. We got some work to do, so let's go ahead and dive in. One idea I had when I was looking at pexels.com, we had this guitar image and we had this, I thought it was a soundboard. As I looked at it again though, it's actually a DJ turntable. So maybe this guy's a DJ and he's not a guitarist at all. Let's go back to our Photoshop file, and I'm going to click, here's a trick. Whatever layer you click on with your, okay, I've got my move tool selected and I've got auto select layer turned on. So I can click through any layer and over here it'll automatically select that layer. So I can start, you know, if I wanted to, I can start clicking on anything and moving it around. I'm going to hit Command Option Z. Remember, you got to throw in that Option key to step back multiple steps. If that was turned off, sometimes it's handy if you've got a really obscure layer. Like let's say you want to move this John Singer title behind him, but without actually accidentally selecting him. So I'll select my layer, and now no matter where I select on my artboard, I can move that around behind his head. Okay, so that's a handy trick to know. Anyway, so what we're going to do now is we're going to play with this a little bit. I don't like this divider here, so I select it. I'm going to hit delete. I can't see my text now, but that's okay. We'll fix that here in a second. I want to fix this gap, so I'm going to click once on him, Command T, and we'll scale him up a little bit, holding the Shift key down. Okay, and then let's grab that turntable, and I'm just going to drag it right into this image. Now, one thing you need to be careful when you download web images, or any image in general, make sure it's a high quality. It should be a bigger file, because you'll notice right now this came in at full size. This is a poster. So now if I hit Command T and I scale it up, I run the risk, let's say I go real big, I run the risk of this becoming really pixelated if I get really close in. You know, maybe it's blurry and it looks bad. So it's just something you need to pay attention to. Okay, in this case it's big enough for what we're doing. I can hit return, and let's hit Command in the left bracket, that key right by the letter P, to move this layer down below him. Okay, now there's not enough contrast, so now what we can play with this layer, we can change the opacity right here, and you can scrub this down to make that a little bit softer, and whatever layers below will show through. I can also, a shortcut for that, I'll just hit the numbers on my 10 keypad. If I hit 5, it jumps to 50% opacity, or maybe 8 for 80% opacity. In this case, I want it to be a little more subtle, so I hit the 3 to 30%. I don't like that purple background. What can we do with that? Let's play with that a little bit. Let us try maybe a blue or something. Okay, and now his title's kind of getting lost. Let's bring that above our turntable layer. And maybe now that those are darker tones, maybe we need to make it a lighter color. So I can, with that layer selected, I'll make it white. Command delete to make it white behind him. I'm going to click on that turntable and just kind of move it around to where it maybe where I like the look of it. Let's just kind of see what we've got here. Maybe we'll feature that so you can see the turntable a little bit better, or maybe we like the dials. It just totally is your preference, your call, whatever you want to do. Okay, so that looks kind of cool. And then now we got to make this text here legible. So let's click on that, and I'm going to make it align left. And let's see here. Let's make this a little bit smaller. People can study this image. If they're really interested in this, they can look at it and figure out the details of the concert. We'll grab this location. So what I'm doing now, I moved it over, hit T, click in there once, Command A to highlight the whole thing, click on the left, align left box, and I'll hit return when I'm done. Actually, hit the enter key when I'm done. And there we go. Now I'm lining these up. I've got these visual guides in Photoshop so I can see that these are in line with each other. I could also select multiple layers at a time. And then I get these alignment options, so I can align these. So these two rectangles would align to the left edge, or to the bottom edge, or to the center. So if I click on this center, it'll align them center with each other. Or in this case, I want them to align to the left edge, so they're all aligned left. Let's make this just a touch smaller here on this poster, or on this location, and I'm really happy with the spacing between here. It feels good and balanced. There's about the same amount of space. It bends around that shoulder. Again, just pay attention to where things are working on your artwork or on your poster, where things are falling in line to make sure that there's good balance. All right, so that feels pretty good. So we could call that done. So there's another version. I'll hit Command S to save it. And let's say for kicks, we want to do one more, and we'll bust it out real quick. I'll hit Command Shift Save. We'll go to V3 on this. Now, before I do that, make sure you save it once first. So you save this currently as version 2, and then Command Shift Save to create another one. All right, so now what we're going to do is one more version of this thing, and let's pretend like they're like, oh, we got to remove this little tattoo on his neck. So I'll zoom in real close, hit the letter L to get my lasso tool, and I'll just draw right around that little tattoo. Let's pretend it was a temporary tattoo or something, and his manager said, oh, we got to remove that. What we can do, make sure that layer's selected. I'll right click, I'll hit Fill. And in Photoshop, we've got this content aware fill. What's awesome about it is it looks at all the pixels around it and fills it in to match. So real quick, you can remove blemishes or things like that. Or let's pretend like on his shirt you wanted to remove, let's say it was a brand name and it had to go away. We could select different elements and right click, fill, do content aware, and boom, it disappears. So that's a fun little tip as we're looking at this. All right. So let's do one more version of this thing. Let's pretend like we want to go more of a subtle texture or random pattern. I can turn that off, and let's add a new layer, and I'll get my brush tool out, hit the letter B. Okay, I'll come over here and open up my brush presets. If you don't see that, go to Window, and you can pull down your brush or brush presets. And Photoshop by default has some pretty good options, but you can also download some brushes, some different texture brushes, and I can provide these in your assets folder for you to look at. But what we can do now is select your brush, and we can hit the bracket key. So the same bracket keys you to move a layer right next to the letter P. So right bracket or square left bracket, makes your brush size bigger or smaller. You can also click up here and scrub left or right to get your brush bigger or smaller. Okay, so on this layer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this blue color. I'm going to click on this chip and make it just a touch darker. And again, make sure you're working on the new layer. Hit the letter B to get my brush tool. And now I can start just kind of clicking anywhere in here, and it's a really subtle effect. But now what I'm doing is adding kind of this little, just a little bit of texture, just so it's not flat. So again, this is where you have to decide how much do you want to put into this piece. What does it take to make it something that looks cool and that's going to get the idea across. So I can turn that on and off if I don't like it. And at this point, you're probably feeling pretty comfortable with Photoshop. So what we're going to do now, we're going to shut down this lesson, and in the next lesson I'll show you how to export these files to either send them to your client to view as a proof or to have them printed. All right, we are on the home stretch for this project. It's time to send it off to our client for a proof or to send to the printer to get printed. Either way, we need to figure out how to get this design out of the box. So let's go ahead and open up the other versions we made too. Right now we're still on version 3. I'll open up Finder, and I'm going to go ahead and rename this just for consistency. I've got version 2 and version 3. This first one we did though didn't have a version, so it looks like it's at the bottom of the stack. So I'll just add V1 just to make sure my files are clean. And I'll open these up. I'll hold down Shift and click all of these in between, hit Command O to open, and it'll open all of those up here. So we've got this version 3 we just wrapped up with. We've got this original photo we started with. I'm just going to close that real quick. And then version 1, which I think looks terrible. And I only say that just so you don't think that I think it looks good. Anyway, let's look at, we got version 2 here. Pretty much the same look. Let's go ahead and export these. The only difference here, we had this turntable and he's still got that tattoo on his neck. Version 3, we did a texture and we've removed the tattoo and this little spot on the shirt. So here are the two ways I would go about getting this out to send to a client. First, what I would do is make sure they're all the same size. I would hit Command 0. What that does, it goes to View and it makes it fit on screen. And I would do that for all 3 of them just so they're all the same size. And this is if I'm sending a screen, if I'm sending a screen grab or a screenshot. What that is, on a Mac at least, I can hit Command Shift 4. I don't know what the shortcut is currently for a PC. I know you can hit the print screen button and it captures the whole thing. But since I work on a Mac and this is my workflow, I'm showing you exactly how I work. I'd hit Command Shift 4, and then I would click and drag down here to get a screen, just a screen grab real quick. I'll click on this guy, do the same thing, Command Shift 4. I use the space bar to move my selection where I want it, up here to the corner, and then let go of the space bar, come down here and get it close, let go. And as soon as I let go, it takes a picture of that file and throws it right on my desktop. So I've got this screenshot and this screenshot right here. I've got to do this last one here. Click on it, Command-Shift-4. And you might be wondering, well, why not just export straight out of Photoshop? Honestly, I could go to File, Save As, or Export, and we will do that here in a second. But for me, Command-Shift-4, quick click and drag and let go, and it's just faster. It also is a low-res file. So let's say I haven't been paid by my client yet, or let's just say I want to send them a text. A lot of times I work with text messaging with my clients. I'll use iMessage, and I'll drag and drop a quick look right to them. I've got a lot of clients that, you know, they travel or whatever, and just to see, hey, am I on track? Am I going the right direction? What do you think of this look? And I'll just quickly grab this screenshot and I'll just drag and drop right into my iMessages, send them a text message, and they can get right back to me, or send it in an email, whatever. One thing I would do though is I would rename these. So this version with the textured background on a Mac, I can just hit return to start renaming this, or, you know, click and get that option to rename it. So this will be, you know, poster V3. I'll come down here to this other screenshot, I'll hit return, poster-V1, and then this last guy, poster-V2. And that way, if they refer back to me and say, hey, I really like version 2, I know what they're talking about. It just keeps everybody on the same page. Okay, so the other bonus to this, I'm on a Retina display, so this file is a little bit bigger. It's 1.5 megs. You know, typically when you do a screenshot, it's going to be under 1 meg. It'll be, in this case, 880 kilobytes. So it's a really nice small file. They can't print from this file, which is nice if you don't want them to print. If it's not been approved yet, you don't want them to try and print from it because it'll look terrible, but that way you can send them a small file size. All right, and so I would take these 3 versions and I would drop it into email or text message and send it to my client and say, hey, what do you like? Now let's pretend like they like, you know, version 3 and they want to print it. The way that I would work to get this to a printer, let's jump over to version 3. So what we'll do is we'll come up to our image, go to mode, and we'll turn it into a CMYK color document. We'll go ahead and flatten all of the images, and that way any of our blend modes that we had don't get messed up. And the reason why we didn't start with CMYK was if we wanted to add different filter effects. If you're in CMYK, not all of the filter effects are available. Okay, so that's why I started in RGB. Now what we're going to do now, we've got it flattened and ready to go. I'll go to File, Save As, and instead of a Photoshop file, which has all the layers and not everybody has Photoshop, I can send it out as a JPEG or a Photoshop PDF file. That would be preferred. I'll save it as a Photoshop PDF file, and I'll just click on this Use Proof Setup. That'll just help the colors look consistent no matter who prints it. I'll click once in here, and I'll hit Save. Right here, this Preserve Photoshop Editing Capabilities, I don't want them to be able to open it up and edit this right now. Plus, it'll make the file much larger, so I'll turn that off. And then I'll go ahead and hit Save PDF. So once that's done saving, you can see Photoshop working on it right now, and it might be a little bit of a bigger file. I will jump over here and I can find that v3.pdf, and you can see it's 17 megabytes, so it's significantly larger than our screenshot. If I send this to press, it'll look fantastic. It's a huge file. One thing we did not talk about was a thing called bleeds, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but just be aware, when we go to print this at a print shop, there's a really good chance it'll have a white border around it because of where the printer has to actually grab the paper. So to avoid that, you would actually print on a larger piece of paper and then trim it back. And again, bleeds are something we'll talk about a little bit down the road, but now you know how to create something in Photoshop and export it, in this case as a PDF, or you could have done a JPEG, and then how to take quick screenshots to share with your client.